Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be checking out the Thrustmaster TCA Yoke Pack Boeing edition for both the Xbox and the PC. This thing was quite the surprise. Stick around. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides as well as any future guides that come along down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below, and thank you to all of my current subscribers. Okay guys, as we get through the unboxing, let's sort of talk about some of the basics here, that comes with this particular product. And you guys are going to see a lot of this stuff as time goes forward in the video, obviously. But when it comes to unboxing stuff, I mean, there isn't really much to say. Obviously, we're talking about a big brand name like Thrustmaster. They're not just going to throw it into a plastic bag and hand it to you from down the street. So I don't typically enjoy doing unboxing videos. I got to be completely honest, but I know a lot of you guys like to see that, and it's important to see the packaging, so I will give you guys that. But in the meantime, you guys get to hear me talk out my backside here for a minute and just sort of fill up some space with some dead air, possibly some singing, maybe some yodeling, we'll see. So the biggest thing that I want to talk about as far as the Thrustmaster TCA yoke pack for the Boeing set, at least, is that I was quite pleasantly surprised, much like I was with the Airbus set, in surprising the fact that the versatility and overall feel of the controls in comparison to what I was expecting to feel, given the fact that they are obviously not the quality of, for example, like their Thrustmaster Warthog in the example. What I mean by that is build materials. There's obviously far more plastic on them than what you would find, for example, on the Warthog. And they're also a lot cheaper. So that's something to be taking into consideration as well. The things that I did not mention in this video at any point that I want to get out very early on is for both Xbox and PC users, this could be sort of an all-in-one, one-stop shop. As long as you're flying an aircraft that doesn't require a joystick. The way that this yoke is designed and the feel of the yoke that I was actually quite pleasantly surprised with, and we'll talk about that later on, especially with the intensified tension spring that we do put on there in this video, is that it felt really good. Even with the center detent that is offered with a kind of spring load system, you're always going to have a center detent as the spring returns back to neutral. I was very, very pleasantly surprised on how it felt. The quality and overall functionality of the control itself is very, very nice. There are buttons and hat switches everywhere and multiple different points at which you can map different axes. And we'll talk about some of those changes to the axis that I'm going to make after I do a very short demo in the 737, short of just feeling out what it would be like to fly the aircraft with this particular unit. The comfort in the controls and the way that the control schemes is laid out was definitely very well thought out with this particular product. Everything is in a very easy space to reach, and it's got tons of functionality that I said that make it very, very easy to use. The one thing that I'll tell you guys right now is those two throttles down at the bottom that we're playing with right there, I do not use at any point in the video, but they are there if you guys need it. The nice thing about the Boeing Edition set that we bought here is it comes with both the yoke and the throttle itself. Now, the throttle or the yoke, as you guys can see there, has a headphone jack on it, so you can plug your audio input output directly into that and have that available. The throttle has the ability to plug directly into the back of the yoke, and the yoke goes over to the PC. And it also has both an Xbox and PC mode. I think the only big difference between the two, if I remember correctly, is sort of just the way that the controls are mapped within inside of the software on the particular device, whether that be PC or the Xbox specifically being referenced there. I don't have Microsoft Flight Simulator on the Xbox, so I don't use it for that. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to show that off. Obviously comes with a USB 3.0 to a USB-C, USB 2.0 to a USB-C device. And then there is the extra tension spring that I'll be showing you guys how to install later on in the video. Then we come over to our throttle. The throttle, again, very, very simple. You have sort of two different choices in the way that they've sort of laid this out. Well, I guess three, depending how you want to look at it. There are a total of 3 movable axes on the throttle that you guys will see here in a second. You can do a spoiler, throttle, flap configuration, or spoiler, throttle, or flap, throttle, or throttle, flap, depending on how you wanted to go about it. And then with the throttles themselves, they also do have the reverse thrust handles. They are just simply a push button action that you guys will see here in just a minute. So it's all or nothing when it comes to the reverse thrusters or the reverse thrust, but you guys will see what all that looks like here in just a moment. The tension on the throttles is pretty good on the throttle axis. The only thing I do wish is that there was a way to make it a little bit stronger. As far as I could tell, I did not see anything that showed in a way to adjust the tension on the throttles. One of the things that I will give Thrustmaster some feedback on right now is I was not incredibly impressed with the instructions on how to customize and what the different pieces were on this particular device. Now, I also want you guys to do me a favor and say hello to Maverick. Maverick is our newest kitten here, and boy, does he fit the name. He's always causing trouble, zooming through the house, and being just about as big a pain in the butt as he possibly can. Absolutely adorable. Love the cat. But anyway, Maverick, you gotta go. Anyway, same connection type as the yoke, USB-C to USB 2.0. And again, the throttle can daisy chain into the yoke, enabling you to only use one USB port on your PC or Xbox to actually complete the configuration. So again, here's where we were talking about the different configuration options. You have 3 axes that exist on the throttles. You have 2 throttle handles with reversers and toga buttons. And the actuation is, I mean, it's like a standard switch. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. It's a switch. Essentially, it's what it is. It's a switch. And then you have the spoiler axis there, which I don't know why I didn't turn it around so you guys can see where it says spoiler, but you guys will see it later on. As far as the overall assembly process, you guys, the throttle, it's just a matter of setting up the configuration. There is a desk mount that you guys will see later on in the video that initially I was not going to put on. And I actually do recommend doing so. And the reason being is if you don't and you use the desk mount that is available on the yoke, you're going to find that the throttle is too far back and it's going to be very, very uncomfortable to use it for most people, I think. And that was certainly my issue, and you guys will see sort of what I'm talking about here in a minute. The yoke sticks out a ways from the edge of the desk or tabletop, whichever you happen to be using. I will say that if you're trying to use like something like a TV tray while we're talking about the mounting system, I do think the yoke is going to be a little too forward heavy to pull something like that off. And the reason why I bring that up is I've seen screenshots and things like that where people have mounted some of their controls, especially for the Xbox, to TV tray. So unless you have a big TV tray, and I mean something with a wide foot base, where it's not going to come forward due to excessive weight on one side, then that's something that I would be considerate of. But I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? So here's sort of the configuration options that I was sort of talking about. You guys can see you have, so there's the spoilers on the left, flaps on the right, which only leaves one left, which means you have a single throttle. Now, that could absolutely work just fine. It's just a matter of, at this point, you would have to have, decide, whether you want the independent throttles or would you want a single throttle and prefer the flap axis. Now, the drag about the flap axis is that there aren't any detents that I could ascertain that existed, for example, that exists in the Airbus set. I was sort of bummed out to see that, but there wasn't anything that I could see as far as being able to enable that like we had the option on the Airbus set. It seems like it's just a solid axis, and you sort of have to decide which way you're going. Now, with the solid axis, or solid smooth axis, I should say, without the detent, I did decide in the end that no, I think I'd rather continue to use the buttons, which are pre-mapped on the yoke. We'll talk about that once we get into the simulator itself for flap control, and I wanted to keep the independent throttle axis. That was just something that I determined to be more appealing to me. As far as the overall feel and quality, I mean, for the price point of this particular set, I thought that it was right on par and there was nothing to be too particularly concerned about. I didn't find anything that I felt was too flimsy or weak, any rattles or shakes, any kind of scratchy feel to any kind of the axis or anything that would make me think it was poorly made, or, like some of the competitors, like if you guys remember, I have no problem saying it. The more publicity it gets, the more you'll understand. Is like the Logitech throttles that, the 3-axis throttles. I had 2 different sets of those, and they were scratchy. They felt dirty right out of the box, and they would ghost. And I didn't feel any of that with these. So that was a very comforting feeling. And again, I wouldn't expect anything less from Thrustmaster. Thrustmaster's always done a pretty damn good job with keeping their quality control up high. So here's the desk mount for the throttle. Now, essentially what you have is you have the ability to either mount it forward or backward, depending on how you want it to go. There's your mounting holes right there. So you have, we're not that point those. I was actually talking to myself saying, I wonder what those are for. But you have the 2 holes that are up at the top, and then you have the 1 single hole down at the bottom that you could use to mount the throttle to. And you can sort of see that center mount and the throttle sitting there on the desk there. I don't know what I was so fascinated by there, but there was nothing of importance. There we go. Hey, there's the mounting holes that I was just talking about. So again, there's that center hole there if you want to use the center mount, or the 2 up on front, which is what I will end up using later, which causes the throttle to hang over the desk quite a bit and be more in line with the yoke. So next up here, we're going to do a couple of different things here. We're going to go ahead and install the desk mount for the yoke, or not the desk mount, excuse me. We're going to show you guys these are the screws for the desk mount for the yoke. You guys don't actually see me install the desk mount. That was something that I decided to do after the fact. But again, they would go actually on those 2 inner holes there, and they would go up on the back of the throttle that I showed you guys earlier, right there, those 2. And then the clamp obviously faces inward towards the desk, keeping the throttle oriented in the right direction. But my initial thought here was actually there's enough footing on the throttle itself that it didn't slide on the tabletop here somehow. And I have sort of a rough textured desk because I built it myself. So I kept the texturing on the desk itself actually relatively coarse, if you will. So that way things can't particularly slide very well on my desk. And I sort of did that intentionally. And I thought that was going to be enough. And as far as moving the throttle, it would be. So if that's something you guys are considering, something that you want to be able to push out of the way, that isn't an issue. Now, unfortunately for the yoke, it's not. The tension's just way too tight. So what you want to do here as far as the adding the tension spring onto the yoke, you need a number 3 Allen key. And so I go and grab that right here rather than trying to use the screwdriver that you guys saw me try to do in the beginning there. Yes, I'm calling myself out. Take the number 3. We're just going to pull those 2 Allen keys out. The other thing that I will tell you guys right now is if you're going to add the extra tension screen, get a pair of pliers. Needle nose, something like that, that can hold on to the spring. You guys will see how I do that later. Initially, I tried without pliers, just using my fingers and things, and it was a pain in the butt, and I shot it across the room about 4 times. So you guys will, again, you guys are going to see that here in just a second, what that all looked like. And so here we're taking the last screw out. Again, number 3 Allen key. There is an Allen wrench that comes with it. I just prefer to use my own because they're easier to manage. Then there are 2 snap clips on the side of it. You just sort of lift them up with your thumbnail or fingernail there, and the cover will come off. It comes up and then slides forward and out. And so that part makes it pretty darn easy as far as getting to it. There wasn't a whole lot to that portion of it. I'd say the trickiest part from here moving forward was actually getting the spring attached. Like I said, make sure you grab yourself a pair of needle nose pliers because without it, it was a pain in the butt. And I kept firing it off into the distance. Now there are 3 springs installed by default. And we're simply adding the 4th to increase that tension just a little bit more. Now you could probably go to the hardware store if you really wanted to get ambitious and get yourself some higher tension springs. I know that's something that came up a lot when it came to the Thrustmaster Warthog. This one makes it a bit easier to do because they're simple, just pull springs here, and so you don't have to worry about the compression. So if that's something that you guys are interested in doing, that's certainly available. So you can see here on the initial try, no, you guys don't get to see me fire it across the room, but you guys can see sort of here that I was trying it, and I realized pretty quick that it was going to be a problem. Yes, I was stubborn, tried a few more times, but then finally went out, grabbed a pair of needle nose pliers, and was able to hook it up relatively easy on the first attempt once I grabbed the pliers. And there we go. And then simply a matter of putting the cover back on, same way, obviously, that you took it off. And then we will get it hooked up into the office and ready for our flight test. Now, when it comes to the flight test, you guys, I flew that 737 like a absolutely completely incompetent fool who stole the aircraft. So that's what I want you guys to pretend. And then we decided, you know what, we're making a mistake. Let's go ahead and land it again. One of the things that I did not take into consideration that I will tell you guys right now, if you are only buying this set, is make sure that you find something to bind a rudder axis to. And I can tell you guys exactly what I would use, and that is the thumbstick that is on the right side of the yoke. It is an axis instead of a push button. It is not a hat. There is a thumb hat on the left side of the yoke, and there is an axis, a little mini joystick, if you will, on the right side. And if you needed to bind an axis to your rudders, I would use that, which I did not think of until after I landed. So please keep that in mind, as it was quite entertaining. I will give you guys that right now and let you know that I cut some of the fluff out of the video when it came to the flying, because it was interesting, and I hope that you guys would think better of me, and so I had to cut certain parts out. But I will give you guys this little tip. As you monitor my takeoff in this lovely 737, pay attention to how close I am to the edge of the runway, and I'm sure you can put the pieces together on how bad things really were there for a minute. Now, the first thing that we did here when we got into the cockpit, it was we checked out the FCP functionality, or the flight control panel, or MCP, I guess that would be in the, let's see, would that be MCP in the 737 or MCP in the Boeing or in the Airbus? Yep, now I'm throwing myself off. But you guys can sort of see there, the auto throttle warning is enabled there, insinuating that the auto throttle has been disengaged, and that was mapped on the yoke. But pay attention, you guys can see the heading rotary working. You have indicated airspeed or Mach. You have the heading, and we have altitude setting. Now, the one thing that I did not get to work in this particular video was the altitude hold. Even with the push button, I did not ever get into a managed altitude climb. So that was something that was sort of frustrating, but just in the aspect that obviously something isn't mapped correctly and I need to go in there and do it. The really cool part is everything that you are seeing here, all the functionality that's displayed inside of this video, was plug and play. I did not change a single configuration on it for the sake of this video. So in the aspect of this video, here's where you guys want to watch where that left side is. Oh, those are runway lights that I am now running over and destroying with that engine. Like I said, I am using asymmetric thrust here to get the aircraft back onto the center. We obviously got going very, very fast. And yeah, she popped right off the ground. But going forward here, the things that are working right out of the gate is your rudder trim, your aileron trim, your elevator trim, your flaps control, auto throttle, autopilot disengage or disconnect, and autopilot alarm silencer, your heading controls, your airspeed controls, altitude target, landing gear, and I think that was it. Oh, parking brake is there. And there was one other, but I don't remember what it was. So, things that you guys can know that are there right out of the gate. And there are multiple camera views. The thumbstick on the right side of the yoke, on the right yoke control, that you guys can sort of see just above my shoulder there sticking up, is by default a camera movement. It allows you to move the camera around and sort of, do a free look. And then the left side hat is also a point of view hat that is more used for momentary look. So you hold it, you look one way, as soon as you let go, it goes back to center. So certainly I would definitely sacrifice the right thumbstick if I did not have rudder pedals, which again, I did not think about, and I don't know why. So it was quite interesting getting that to be set up. So if you don't have any rudder pedals, you still do have an option by using the Boeing yoke pack. Overall, my general thoughts of it, and the thing that I was very, very happy about, was the feel of it while flying. And I think where you guys are going to see the most of this action is when we come into land here in just a second, which the video will cut to very shortly. While coming into land, there was a lot of movement that was required on the yoke, and it felt much more natural than that of using the flight stick that I normally use. I normally use a Virpil flight stick for 95, 80% of my, or 90% of my videos, however you want to do it. And this felt much more natural. It was definitely an immersion improvement. absolutely an immersion improvement on the yoke. The throttle, I would say, isn't necessarily an immersion improvement, but it was very functional. That was one thing that I was very happy about. It was functional, and it certainly served its purpose, and I think was absolutely worth the money that they are asking for this particular set. A link to it, of course, you guys, is down in the description, as always, if you guys are interested in taking a look at the pack. Pay attention closer here as we come into land. Monitor what I'm doing there on the yoke. Now, if you guys ever compare to a real-world 737 or Boeing flight in general where they were using the yoke, there's a lot more controlled or, control axis movement that you are seeing here. And this is the first time I've ever been in a situation where I find myself doing this. And I think it's just because on the flight stick that I use that I was talking about earlier, my Verbo flight stick, it has a very short throw on it. I have very small cams in it with a very short throw, so I'm not really moving it as much. And oh, yeah. Dropped a piano on this thing, guys. I'm very, very sorry for that. So bad landing, great product, but terrible landing is what that thumbs down was all about. I do it again here in a second. Terrible landing. The product is phenomenal. The yoke, I'm very, very happy with. The throttle, again, very functional, and it's going to depend on what you're looking for. If you already have a throttle that has a lot of this functionality, I think I would recommend against the throttle. If you don't have anything at all, this is a perfect set. I would absolutely grab this set. The one thing that I really actually do enjoy with the throttle is the FCP mode selectors. Being able to change your airspeed, altitude, target, and heading directly there on the throttle. The response was very, very nice. It was definitely very, very handy. For you Xbox users, I think this is an absolutely amazing piece of equipment that will serve you very, very well, much like I thought with the Airbus pack that they have as well. The big immersion bringer to this one was definitely the yoke. Anyways, that is my review of the TCA Yoke Pack Boeing Edition from Thrustmaster, you guys. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys as always. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, folks.